Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. In response to rapid territorial gains made by the Islamic State in the first half of 2014, its brutal tactics, and rising support among Muslims around the world, the United States under the Obama administration decided to establish a campaign of airstrikes against the extreme Muslim group in Iraq and Syria, garnering active support of both regional and Western powers. To discuss the current state of the US-led coalition and their success in combating the Islamic State, I'm joined here in the studio by Dr. Kobi Michael, a senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies. Welcome. I'd like also to welcome our TV7 analyst, Mr. Amir Oren, and Dr. Nir Bones, a research fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University. Welcome. Michael, do you believe that the US-led coalition is happy where it is right now when it comes to the progress of combating this Islamic State?
I doubt it. And I think that the achievements are pretty limited there, and I think that everybody understands that a change should be done in this regard. And I think that the American administration has a severe and significant challenge in front of him. I do believe that there is a will to change the strategy. There is a very deep thinking about changing the strategy. And if we'll have some time, I will elaborate on the components of this strategy, at least as far as I understand it.
Dr. Michaeli, in December of 2014, there was an international gathering in Europe where we had the United States together with some 59 states that were willing to take part in an operation or a global operation to combat the Islamic State, during which the Secretary of State at the time, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, he declared that there were three main components to the international battle against this group, including the ideology, the funding, and the recruitment. Do you believe that since December of 2014 until today, has there been some successes in the operation pertaining to those that were stated at the time by Kerry?
As I told you before, I think that the success is very limited. I think that the American political will in this regard was pretty constrained. I mean, my colleagues here talked about the reluctancy of boots on the ground, and I think that even the aim, although was declared by President Obama, the idea of the eliminating ISIS or the Islamic State, it was more a declaration than a political will. I do believe that there is a change at the current American administration, and I do believe that the Americans understand pretty well that they have to fight in two levels simultaneously. They have to deal with the physical level, meaning the elimination of the Islamic State as a state, and they have to deal with the ideological level, which in a sense it is much more complicated than the first level. And in order to do that, they have to build or to fortify the alliance and to build their allies, be it the pragmatic or moderate Sunni states, or be it the militias, the armed militias, which are deployed there in northern Iraq and eastern Syria. And they will have to do it much more seriously than they did it till today. But I think that there should be two or three more components in the American strategy. The first one should be thinking about changing the rules of engagement, because Amir talked before about the casualties, the civilian casualties, and the Americans are pretty constrained, not only the Americans, but all their Western allies as well. And they will have to think about changing the rules of engagement, because these rules are not efficient, and they are abused by ISIS, and therefore they prevent the Americans from achieving some further success. Secondly, they have to think about building differently the alliance with their Sunni partners, because I think that today the Sunni partners are very partially involved in the effort, and they should be much more responsible and much more involved. Thirdly, they have to find a way how to deal with the inner tension between Russia, Iran, the triangle of Russia, Iran, and the United States, because they need the Russians in order to deal with ISIS, but the Russians go together with Iran, and Iran should be out of the equation.
Dr. Michael, your response?
I think that we have to ask ourselves why actually the ideology of ISIS is flourishing. Okay, and in a sense, it is a question of alternatives that the Arab societies here in the region face, and the alternatives to ISIS ideology, at least in the last decade, or in the last 6 years of the Arab upheaval, were I would say pretty bad alternatives, and therefore ISIS was something that people felt that they can identify with. And therefore, the challenge for America and for the Western world and for the regional players is to rebuild the region here in a way that the phenomenon of failed states and corrupted regimes will not be there anymore. I know that it is not a process of 1 year, okay? It is a very long process, and it is a very complicated process, but people have to understand that they have an alternative to this ideology. Once they will understand that there is an alternative, and they will be convinced that real and serious and severe efforts are done in this regard, I think that ISIS ideology will be weakened. As long as the region will remain as ungoverned region, as corrupt region, as a region where minorities or groups, be it political groups or regional groups, will find themselves without representation in the political sphere, I think that it will be much easier for ISIS and its supporters to flourish here in the region.
Professor Michael.
I think that it is a great and very complicated mission that we as the Western world are facing. It is going to be a long journey. I think that it depends mostly on the American leadership. And I think that if America will be able to tackle the internal tensions in the components of the future strategy, I think that it will signal probability of success. The problem is that the internal tensions within the components of the future American strategy are pretty complicated and very hard to tackle, because America has to deal with, I would say, contradictory rationales or contradictory interests of the different players here in the arena, mainly the Turks, the Iranian, the Russians, and the local militias, mainly the Kurds, because everybody here has different interests and contradicting interests, and America has to be almost a sort of a magician in order to deal with all of these.
Do you believe that Washington and Moscow will be able to align some kind of strategy in cooperation and coordination in order to implement a successful endeavor against this group?
Yes, but America will have to pay a price for the Russians, and the price will be not in the Middle East. I think that the price will be in Ukraine and Eastern Europe and maybe Eurasia, because these are the main concerns of Putin and of the Russians. They really feel threatened along these fronts, and I think that they will ask the price there. But I think that it's doable. I mean, I think that America and Russia can build an alliance in order to tackle ISIS in Syria. I hope that America will be able to convince the Russians to take out the Iranians from this alliance.
Professor Michael, your closing remark?
I think that As have been said here before, the challenge is a multi-layer challenge, and it has two time dimensions. Okay, the current one, or the more immediate one, which is the battle against or the campaign against ISIS, and the second one, which is for the long run, is the re-engineering or the re-political engineering of the Middle East.
I'd like to thank Professor Kobi Michael for coming here, Mr. Amir Oren, and Dr. Nir Bohm. Thank you very much. I'd like also to thank our viewers, and we will see you again on Tuesday at the same time.